So hello, it's Paul Green here, just having another one of our regular focus on panel discussions with some experts in their field. So we're going to be looking at technology today. So if you're tuning in on this and you want to ask any questions on whatever platform you're tuning in on, then please feel free to do so. And likewise, if you're watching a replay of this, then please put something in the comments and one or all of us will get back to you with whatever you've got to talk about. So without further ado, let's just go around the screen and just sort of introduce my guest today. So, Chris, do you want to let people know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Chris Lambert from DataSense.
We're just having another one of our regular focus on panel.
Sorry, that's in the background. I'm Chris from DataSense. We are data protection specialists. I look after the managed IT side of the business.
Okay, thank you. Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Exley from Gravitas HR Solutions. I'm an HR consultant specialising in all aspects of HR, plus reward management and employee engagement.
Excellent. And finally, last but not least, Dava.
Hi, thanks, Paul. I'm Davar, and I run a company called Recruitico. We provide offshore remote staff. We hire highly skilled professionals overseas and get them to work remotely for businesses in the UK.
Okay, excellent. So thanks for coming along today, guys. I just wanted to start off the discussion really with, what impact you think technology has had over the last couple of years as we've been going through the pandemic. If you think it's had an impact, you obviously don't have to think it's had an impact. It's entirely up to you what your view is. So we'll go in reverse order to your introduction. So Dava, what are your thoughts on technology over the last couple of years and the impact it may have had on small businesses?
I think obviously the biggest obvious thing that we've seen is remote working and remote staff, and the idea of working from home. And I think businesses were it wasn't something anyone was sort of prepared for, and it was done in sort of in quite urgently as a sort of emergency kind of measure. And then people learned and are still learning to actually work from home, and that has led to quite a few changes in the way people work and the tools that people use. I mean, the first sort of example that comes to my mind really is of you, Paul, and Buzzcom, how networking meetings used to be face to face, and then within sort of a period of 2 weeks, you switched from venues and breakfast to Zoom, and everything was done using Zoom. So that's quite that's the obvious one that comes to my mind.
Yeah, that was a steep learning curve about 2 years ago, Dava, when that had to happen. So yeah, red wine sales went up that fortnight. So Mark, what are your opinions on technology over the last couple of years?
Well, I think looking at it purely in HR terms, what's happened is that the two big areas that have been impacted are the administration of HR and then recruitment. So recruitment has now taken off online. You used to have pages and pages of job adverts on a Thursday in most local publications. Now you've got none. Everything's online. Everything's managed online. That's a big revolution, really. The other aspect is the way that we manage administration. I used to go into big HR departments and they would have 20 filing cabinets full of personal information. Now that can be held safely and securely in the cloud, and the use of cloud-based HR information systems has grown massively over the last couple of years. And it's made life so much easier because you can have self-service, so employees can update their own details, they've access to their own documents, and so on. It's just made life a lot easier, and it's added to this idea of a paperless office if you have an office. If you don't have an office anyway because you're working remotely, it's the absolute ideal solution.
Oh, and why do you think, based on what both of you guys said, why do you think that didn't happen earlier? Why do you think it took a pandemic to make all these things sort of suddenly start to happen?
I think it's probably not just the last 2 years that those two things have happened. What it's done is accelerated. So it's very similar to online shopping. Online shopping's moved forward 6 years. overnight virtually, in terms of it's taking over from sort of face-to-face retailing, if you like. So it's a similar process. People who were maybe thinking about it decided it was the only option. So you've had an avalanche of people using these systems, with the benefits that brings.
Yeah. So just sped up the process. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the guys have touched on it really well. The last 2 years has probably been the biggest change in work lifestyle since the Industrial Revolution. We couldn't, if you think back, when was dial-up still around, think back to kind of 2005, and most people had dial-up at home, their internet. And for those of you who are watching this who don't remember dial-up, it sounded like a robot being murdered down your phone line. Go and look on YouTube, Wikipedia. There's some great history stuff on the times of dial-up. We wouldn't have coped. Businesses would not have coped with dial-up for people working from home. We certainly wouldn't be doing things like this if we were still on dial-up. It would have just been impossible. And it's changed it. It's pushed forward things literally overnight that were 10 years down the line. Mark's absolutely right. It's been a massive change that on online shopping, I've still barely been to any shops. I've just done everything online because that's now become the most convenient and the new normal for me.
Yeah.
I will probably still at some point get back to doing that, but do I want to go and traipse around Tesco's with people, or do I want to spend 10 minutes online doing what would normally take me an hour to do? It's been the biggest real life changing event since the Industrial Revolution, literally, because it's changed so much for everyone.
Yeah, I can get that. So Mark, looking at an HR perspective for a moment, what was your experience with the people you were working with the transition they firstly had to make in terms of sustaining their business through remote workers, and then as they were starting to come back in the office, there may be discrepancy between people still wanting to work remotely and those that were quite happy to get back in the office. What was your experience of that and opinion on that?
Well, we had a mixed bag with our clients. We had clients who were phenomenally well prepared, almost like they were able to switch to a disaster recovery kind of mode, and everyone overnight was able to work from home. And we had other clients who were completely caught out and had to then rush out and buy people laptops and then start to upgrade their IT system. So it was really a mixed bag. But I think more interesting for me has been how people have looked at the transition back into work. And I think what we found is, although some clients never left work, they've carried on working throughout. Ones who did have a lot of people working remotely, most of them have had some element now of getting back to the office or getting back to the workplace. But I think we're seeing a blended approach of being optimizing the strengths of both systems. So what people are literally doing is, say they might have an organization which is made up of teams, and so each team will have a contact day in the premises, and then some ability to take time in the premises at other times, maybe on a first come first serve basis. But it means that everyone's getting the contact time, but they're also got the benefits of not having to get trains and tubes into London or drive 40 miles to their office. So it's saving people money, and what's happening right now with fuel. That's probably not a bad thing.
No, absolutely. So Dava, you've been in the remote working business pre-pandemic. So what's your experience been of it?
Yeah, it's from a personal point of view, and for my business, a lot of people who don't know me, when I speak to them, they think we're some sort of a post-COVID business idea. But I have to tell them that no, we've been doing this before COVID, and this was always how we work. It's been a lot easier to explain to people what we do. But before COVID, I used to say that we provide offshore remote stuff, and everyone's like, offshore remote stuff. What exactly do you mean by that? So if people sitting away somewhere and they don't actually come to the office and they're actually doing the work. Some people still understood the concept. It wasn't something unheard of, but it wasn't something very common. And now I just have to say the words offshore remote stuff, and people are like, offshore remote stuff. Oh yeah, we get the idea. We get where it is. So from personal point of view, it's that. When COVID hit, we didn't have to make any changes to how we worked in our business, but the clients that we were working with, there were certainly some ups and downs, and everyone was quite stressed about it. But obviously, it was we didn't really have to make any major changes to our business because of COVID. Fortunately, the way it was set up.
Okay, so Chris, more use of technology, more people potentially online or online for longer. Presumably that's a cyber criminal's a dream come true, isn't it?
It is, and to be fair, in some respects, it's always been there. People, if they're insecure at home, won't have changed that over the course of the pandemic. And with the remote working, yes, it has led to a larger attack vector. And we saw it with clients where, they've, as Dava said, everyone had to change their plans overnight. And a lot of our clients where we've got disaster recovery plans, they just enacted that and they moved almost seamlessly to work from home. And we tried to address all the cybersecurity issues. And other people where they've either been working from home and just gone with how they've always done it, or it's been rushed. It has led to bigger and easier attack vectors. People get a router from their ISP, they plug it in and think that's it. The fact is that there's only a small number of passwords really used on routers, and if you can get access to that list, then you're in. Most people won't even change the default credentials on a router, and most routers, especially the commercial ones, are still admin or admin password to log in.
So in your experience, in the clients you work with, do you think they've done enough to make sure that remote workers are protected from cybercrime possibility?
Well, that's a crazy question, because of course the people we work with, we've done everything we can to help them. I can't say for those of them who don't work with us.
Generally, then.
Generally, no, probably not. Certainly within the first couple of months, it was a mad rush. People were just rushing out. I think Mark said it earlier, rushing out and buying laptops. To get hold of a laptop was like hen's teeth. It was very difficult to get hold of a laptop, and the price rise in hardware saw that. But they were buying things from PC World that were not fit for purpose, completely impractical for the job, but that's all they could get. So it really has, it's led to other options for getting into machines.
Mm-hmm. So Mark, again, sort of from your point of view, do you think small businesses have done enough to make sure that remote workers are data is protected? Because obviously they're probably handling more sensitive stuff at home now. What would your view on it be?
I think it's a mixed bag. I'm not quite so sure. I mean, there are other considerations about the working from home issue, like ergonomics of where people are sitting. People working on literally sitting on a bed, or on a sofa, at the kitchen table. There's all that sort of stuff, which I think people have started to get their head around. People doing actual display screen equipment assessments of people's home workstations. But I think in terms of the IT, I'm pretty certain that Chris has hit the nail on the head. A lot of employers will not have thought through the full implications of what they're doing. And I think we will see over the next 2 years how that shakes out in terms of legislation, but also some prosecutions, I would imagine. I think there's going to be quite a lot of court cases where people are actually have injured themselves or lost data or lost money or whatever through having to work from home. So I think there are some big issues there that will come out, because people have thrown themselves into it and then got used to it, and it becomes normal then, even though it's not set up properly. So the new normal becomes, that's acceptable, when the reality is all the health and safety and other data protection laws still apply, and that's the issue.
I think, Mark, just on that, can I just say that's a really nice sofa you appear to be sitting on?
Is that right? Thank you. I'm here because the office is occupied with there's some investigation work going on in the office, so I can't sit in the office. But yeah, it is a sofa, and I am actually not the most comfortable on this sofa. So you're right.
Okay, well, we'll crack on and get this discussion.
Just for Dawn, when she watches this back, obviously we have highlighted to Mark that he's not in the best place. So when he tries to sue the company, you know he's been warned.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
I'll prove myself. Don't worry.
Well, in terms of your own businesses, then, what have you made more use of technology? Have you changed stuff in your business? What sort of things have you done, or what impact has the last few years had on your business? Dava, why don't we come to you first?
I think definitely, looking at different, particularly different pieces of software that are out there and things that we can use in the business is, I think, something that businesses should do regularly anyways. The idea is if you can get a piece of software that makes your life easy, or it can automate something, then it's a good idea anyways. The whole 2 years with COVID, working from home, and a lot of stuff that's happened has, like Mark quite rightly said some time back, it's accelerated a lot of things. Personally, in my business, there are a couple of tools that we use that have been really useful, particularly during COVID. And what we've seen is that a lot of the clients that we were working with are now much more comfortable using these tools. I think instant messaging tools like Slack are really good. They're and particularly with people working remotely, they've been really helpful. There's another there are a couple of really good project management tools. Monday.com particularly is one of them that we use internally, and a few of our clients use as well, which again help automate and streamline a lot of things. And the third thing, which is the third tool that we have been using for quite some time, is which is quite relevant in the context of the pandemic and people working from home. It's a tool called HubStaff, which is a time tracking and monitoring system, which people can install on their computers, and they can actually track their time and what they're doing on different projects and things like that. So that is something. These are the sort of tools that I think many businesses are going to start using more and more with the whole hybrid working model, people working from the office and from home. And overall, it's good for efficiency and productivity as well, regardless. So.
Sounds like Chris. What about you? Any particular changes or evolution within your business over the last few years?
Well, there has been a lot, but that's more because I've changed businesses in the middle of a pandemic. But no, I mean, I've always used remote access software for client support. So it was no big change to me to be sat at home, ironically, at the kitchen table for the first 6 to 9 months of the pandemic. Even though I've got a fully furnished office at home, I still just sat on the kitchen table because it seemed like a normal thing to do. So no, there's not been any massive changes in how we work. We've taken on new bits of software to make things more streamlined, but that's more in-house admin, not really for the main work of what we do.
Okay.
There's no real big change. But then again, that's the nature of what we do in terms of support. We've always had remote access, so it's not a new thing for us.
Okay. Mark, what about you guys?
In terms of our own, the impact on us, I think it's, we have access to, we resell an HR information system for our clients. We have access to as administrators. So that's been quite useful for us to keep that going. It fell into its perfect spot really by what happened. But I think I was just going to mention something else that we didn't mention earlier that I think is important, is that the advance of remote working has also resulted in an increase in mental health issues related to people being in isolation. Something that is a big impact of the technology, but actually more an impact of the situation we're in and the way that technology is being used to solve that problem. Probably the three main reasons people go to work is to earn a living, and to give them a purpose to get up in the morning. And then also the social side of it, to actually meet people. And I think taking two of those things, one away and one almost taken away, has had a huge impact on people. So I think that's probably why contact time is so important, and it cannot really always be completely remote, and why that will have a dire impact on people's mental health over time.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly one of the topics that I think we'll discuss on the future panel, because I agree with you, it is going to have an impact, more widely than it would have done pre-pandemic, I think. So, question popped in the head and straight back out again. I'm sure it'll come back to me. Oh yes, just from my point of view, I think advancement in technology has been vital for my business since the start. If I look at the networking side, when I started a decade ago, it was just emails out, populating a spreadsheet to create an attendee list. As you get bigger, that becomes less and less practical. So you sort of move to platforms like Eventbrite. Then I think I moved to a specific WordPress site, just sort of like cut down on some of the external costs. And ultimately, given that my business runs in a certain way, I started to use Ashish from Web Alliance to sort of develop bespoke software to actually work almost identically to how my business works, and it just saves oodles and oodles of time in terms of what would have been highly administrative stuff for all the different types of groups that I run now. So yeah, certainly technology has been a godsend to me, and as Dava touched on earlier, it's certainly impacted productivity and made me much more efficient in terms of what I'm doing from a day-to-day basis. So do you think the evolution of technology will slow down? Do you think virtual is here to stay? Do you think it'll there'll be less growth in the technology sector in years or months going forward? Chris, what do you think?
It's not going to slow down. Technology never does. What we use as consumers is still years behind what's being developed. You just take mobile phones, for instance, particularly with the 5G rollout that's been going on for the last couple of years. They're already into 6G and 7G technology, where we lag behind what's actually current as consumers. So no, it's not going to slow down. It might and probably will accelerate because we're going to find new ways of working, as we've been forced to in the last 2 years. I was at a show, when was it, at some point last year, September, October time, and moving on from the Zoom concept of us just being like the Muppet Show with a load of windows, there's one group's gone down the route of actually the full VR headsets, and you are networking in a VR environment. That is out there on some platforms, but this was taking it to the next level, that you're almost face to face with people, albeit you're thousands of miles apart. So I don't think it's going to slow down at all. I think we're just going to see people ramping up to develop what is the next stage of their work.
Okay, Dava, what are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with a lot of things Chris just mentioned. There's a lot of, generally looking at technology, there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline. So I don't see it slowing down during our lifetimes, or for many years to come, really. And there's lots of different areas. I mean, things like automation and artificial intelligence. We're just getting started with things like that. So there will be progress in those areas. Then software as a service industry. So a little bit of software and apps, which have become a lot more relevant, and it just makes those businesses a lot more relevant. So a lot of other new businesses are going to sort of jump into to come up with similar products that have become popular, like Zoom and online messaging, and adding a little bit of innovation to existing concepts. And then I saw this interview some time back, and Elon Musk wants to do Mars, so using rockets and stuff. So there's that too. So I don't think technological advancement is going to slow down anytime soon.
Okay, Mark, what about your thoughts?
I think it's quite a frightening prospect, but I think what technology is trying to do is take away the human factor. And I think when you look at the whole process of what we do in work, the least predictable element that within the working process are the people, which is probably why we have a job, because that's when people don't do what you tell them to do, or do something ridiculous, or just need to be developed. I think the more that AI comes in, it will start to try and take that away, but ultimately someone's got to create it. And I did hear somebody talking in a similar kind of forum to this, saying that a lot of menial jobs will end up being completely mechanized, and that will allow the people doing the menial jobs to do something more fulfilling as a job. And I think they're missing the point that the reason they were doing the menial jobs often is because they couldn't do the other jobs. So the technology has taken away a lot of base level jobs, lower income jobs, and that's why I think it's quite dangerous. I'm not sure whether it will actually divide society a little bit if it carries on like it is, and it will actually take away any opportunity for certain people within society. So I think it's quite an interesting, but also quite a worrying development. But I can't see it stopping, because people are making money from it, and if you follow the money, you usually get to the root, don't you? And ultimately, people are making money out of technology, and the more technology and the newer things they can bring in, pace of change is very, very quick. And because you've got that pace of change, people are demanding more and more things, and asking the question of why can't it do this, or why can't it do that? So it's consumer driven in the main, but it's also, I think, with the rise of the giant tech corporations, they also will be shaping what people want. Which is the other worrying factor to a lot of people, that they feel that they've become too powerful, and they're actually really just shaping trends rather than trends taking a natural course.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Definitely see that. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it does evolve over time. I mean, for me, you know, in the last few years, you know, I certainly looked at different platforms. You know, I think everybody wished they had shares in Zoom, you know, come around March 2 years ago. But I've seen other platforms pop up and evolve. And as Chris sort of like touched on earlier, some of these platforms that are trying to emulate as much as possible what it's like to be in the real world, you know, and not necessarily with VR headsets or stuff like that. I think there was, I want to say it was Trello, but I think there was a company that, when they went in lockdown, created a whole virtual platform exactly like their office was, and everybody was sitting in the same virtual place. But even though they're at their own home, they could be in this platform and wander around it freely, and still go and talk to their colleague as they would before. You know, they'd still got the water coolers and the coffee machines and stuff like that. It was quite an interesting project. Were you going to say something, Chris? I saw you on mute.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, just on that. One of the surprise ones that I came across was and I know Mark Costa's mentioned this in our social get-togethers, a computer game called Red Dead Redemption 2. It's a cowboy game. You're just out in the wilderness of the Wild West, but people were meeting at set points around a campfire and having team meetings. It's the most bizarre thing, but people were doing it, and it worked really well for them. And it does go back to what Mark said. It's that human element of contact. And I know quite well, I think by the end of the first week of lockdown, you, me, Kevin Robinson at 13 Media, and a bunch of others, we'd set up a virtual pub. Just so we had a point in the week where we all had a touch point with a bunch of people that we, class as people we've met, and drank together and found out, I won't mention her name, but found out lots of different things about certain people that would never probably come up in a real world conversation. Do you know who I'm referring to? As to you.
That's us. Go ahead.
That's the way it's going to be added to, I think, as well.
I mean, I think that's certainly helped my mental health get back to the mental health thing that Mark raised. I mean, having somewhere finite, albeit virtual, that you knew you were going to sort of meet some people online and have a bit of a laugh and just talk rubbish for however many hours. That became a thing that I look forward to and sort of got me through the week if I was having a bad week. So, certainly that was a blessing in disguise. And, I think for that bunch of people, it's brought us closer together than we were, pre-pandemic, so it's had some interesting impact. But back to the sort of technology, as some of you know, I used a platform called Topia to do a little sort of like showcase, because what I quite liked about it is you could go into this platform. It's a virtual world, but you can freely wander around, and like a real exhibition, as you get nearer to a person on the screen, you start to hear them, and their camera fades in. The only downside with it is that they built into it that the little avatar, if you clicked on it, could dance. So what I found when I tested this out with at least one person who's here present today and some others is you tend to get the mental age of the person go down to about 8 as they line themselves up and just click on a little avatar. So you've got 7 little avatars just dancing together. So yeah, there's always a downside to technology, I think.
And I was quite surprised that Mark did that. It was really shocking.
Mark wouldn't do anything like that. So, Guy, any more, whilst we wrap this up, any more observations on technology, any concerns, any further thoughts? Dava?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that when Mark mentioned about the whole thing being scary, how technology can actually take over some jobs. I think that is a valid point, but and it's a valid concern. But you know, we've already seen automation take some sort of menial jobs. You know, for example, ATM machines and traffic lights, and a lot of other little examples of stuff which has been replaced by machines that people used to do. And generally, we've been okay. So it's just a matter of seeing how far it can go. Other than that, I think it's something to look forward to. You know, the advancements in AI and virtual reality, particularly after the pandemic, and you know, stuff that actually comes to consumers, and new things and apps and gadgets that come into the market. It is actually quite exciting as well as a business owner, and generally as a consumer, to have a look at stuff and things that are coming up and how you can utilize them in your life and your business.
Okay, Mark, any final thoughts?
I just think it's a fascinating subject. I think what we've been through in the last 2 years has turned everything upside down. But it's how we come out of it now that will be interesting, and how people adapt to it. I am sensing that there's a lot more normality around now, and I think if we can take the best bits of what we've learned over the last 2 years and move forward with that, rather than feeling that technology is a panacea for everything, I think that would be really helpful, because there's been some great advancements over the last 2 years. It's now about actually seeing how we can actually best utilize it and develop it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Chris, any final comments?
I could probably go on for a couple of hours on other things.
Yeah, let's not do that.
I think I'd back up again what Mark said about things like Meta and social media influencing people. But I mean, that's been going on for a long time. I would recommend anyone who's got Netflix or other ways of watching stuff on Netflix to watch the show called The Great Hack, which talks about Cambridge Analytica. It touches on Brexit and the Trump campaign, which I won't go into because it's far too political for this kind of debate. But it shows how people can be influenced quite easily by posts on social media. And Mark's absolutely right. Meta's a really good one for this, because they own so many different brands, Facebook, Instagram, many more. It's their way of telling us what to do. We no longer a user. We are a product of these groups, these companies. You know, I sat with Green Umbrella, did one of our cybersecurity days, and I asked the girls there, what's Facebook's product? Not one of them could answer the question, and they seemed surprised when I said that we're the product. Us posting on there isn't what it's there for. It's for them to sell us to their customers. Mm. And the other thing I'll touch on, because it is obviously hot news at the moment, and it's something I'm seeing a lot more of, is the war in Ukraine. As awful as that is, and none of us want to see that kind of thing in the world nowadays. There's been lots of pop-up cyber armies. People are downloading software just randomly off the internet because someone's referred them to it, thinking that they're doing good to make cyber attacks against Russia or other countries that might be linked to the invasion. But actually what they're doing, and this goes back to something you said earlier, in terms of cybersecurity, is actually opening up their machines, their home networks, as vulnerable spots. They're using unknown software to connect out and do these cyber attacks completely illegally, but making themselves targets equally to do other things they don't even realize are going on in the background. So it's a topic for probably another time, but it's something that's, again, massive, that we're now more connected because of the last 2 years, that we've got Joe Public thinking they could be a cyber hero by downloading a bit of software to attack Russia cyberly. Completely the wrong attitude to have, and very, very dangerous for them.
Yeah, I think my biggest fear, is the cybercrime aspect of it, and what's possible, and what could be done to harm sort of the infrastructure of any country, really. On a lighter note, I think and you alluded to Green Umbrella. They've made some interesting observations because they're experts in social media around the shopping experience and the different platforms that are getting more and more engaging in that, in giving people a shopping experience from their desktop, from their laptop, whatever, in as much as I think there's certain platforms where you can take an image of your lounge or whatever, and then if you're shopping for a sofa, you can put that sofa into your lounge to sort of like see what it looks like and do sort of stuff like that. So it opens up lots of opportunities, I think, for how consumers will use technology going forward. So I think we'll end it there, guys. So thank you very much for joining me today. I'll let you crack on with the rest of your day and week. If anybody's listening to this on replay, then please feel free to put questions in the comments. I'll tag these guys in on those platforms. So if you have specific questions for them, then they'll be available to you. So thank you very much, gents.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.